Welcome everyone for Unit Masters Cohort 9. We're still in week 1 of our 6 weeks program for blockchain literacy. And in this week, we speak about the fundamental principles of the Internet of Value, Web3, and decentralization. Today, we have with us Kate. Kate is a very well-known speaker, and we just recently met at South by, so I'm very, very blessed to have met her finally in real person. I've followed her works over the past month and years actually to get updated on what's the latest and greatest when you think about the ecosystem. And so Kate is from UK. But currently you're in Austin, right?
Yep, I am.
Yeah. And she's published books and talked a lot about, or built a lot of expertise and knowledge, like educated a lot of community about the role of Web3, how it's going to disrupt our societies, and also how can we think about money in a more holistic and more progressive way than we have it today, and in which way the blockchain, for example, can help us think about money differently. This is also the topic of today's session, Web3 revolution and programmable money. And you have then time to ask dedicated questions via the chat, and I will bring them to Kate. And then we have time for breakout group sessions to also get to know each other and get to know the speaker. If you like,
Fantastic.
the stage is all yours, Kate. Thank you so much
brilliant.
for being with us.
It's an absolute pleasure, and I have so much to talk about in literally the next 15 minutes. I'm trying to keep an eye on the time as well, but that's on my computer over there, so if I keep checking. So yes, as Yip said, I've been working in emerging technologies for getting on now for, I guess my first emerging technologies would have been in the 1980s. So going back about 35, 40 years when I started programming on basic computers. And I've been all the way through and seen the evolution from the arrival of the World Wide Web and then the gradual expansion of the internet. So into the Web 2.0 as we started to get the social media arriving. And we are really now on the cusp of Web 3.0. And I want to try and give you a flavor over literally the next 10, 15 minutes of what is all coming together. What is this big convergence that is just changing our world now? And the several really key things that are just all happening. And I guess the first one is data. So every 2 years, the amount of data that we have in the world doubles. And this is the case on and on and on. You can look back over the last 2 decades and you can look ahead to what's predicted. And in 2 years' time, we will have twice as much data in existence as we do now. And at the moment, we have twice as much data as we did 2 years ago. So there's this huge exponential rise in the amount of data that is being gathered from all of the things around us, from sensors, from supply chains, from our interactions with our phones, from the things we do in games, from the things we do in software. And all of this is starting to be used and to be mined and to be not exploited in a bad way, but to be used to change the way that our world works and the way that machines can help us to be better versions of ourselves, to make better decisions, to make the best decisions that a human might make on their best day. So we have this huge data aspect, and we have the arrival of artificial intelligence and the growth of machine learning to bring new trends and new concepts and new insights into our world. And then we have the realities that we have started to work with. So all of those wonderful virtual reality headsets, some people peering in all sorts of directions to be within a 3-dimensional world. And the arrival of suits from simply a hand that can touch and feel in a reality to complete movement. You can go and buy in Austin today for around $250 a full haptic suit that allows you to move as an avatar in the metaverse. I've seen somebody playing with it. I could have bought one. I don't have any use for one right now, but this is how close we are to this extraordinary explosion of reality. And then on top of all of that, there are 2 really crucial things. One of them is COVID, because we've all got used to interacting with each other like this. I mean, I'm completely comfortable sitting here in a room in Austin with my phone on a tripod and talking to all of you all around the world, because in the last 2 years, this is what we've got used to. We know that we can suddenly access the knowledge and the inspiration from people across the globe. We have built our own metaverse. And the final thing that is happening is the arrival of blockchain and the maturing of blockchain technology and the explosion of possibilities with programmable money. And I know that's what we want to really focus on today, but it's all part of a mishmash. You can't have one without any of the others. So we talk about a golden triangle, a golden pyramid of technologies, where we have all of our data that is collected through all of our interactions with the world and all the interactions of all of the things in our world. And all of that data has to be trusted, has to be verifiable, has to have a provenance to it. And this is where blockchain comes in and gives us that trust in the data that is being collected. And then artificial intelligence at the top of the pyramid gives us the insights that we could not previously have gathered from the volume of data that we now have. So we're in a really unique time. It's absolutely extraordinary. And there's this whole technology stack that is just making the metaverse something that we can grasp and which represents our future. So what are the big things that we are going to see coming through? I guess I'm going to focus on the way that blockchain is working, is helping with ownership and with earning. So we have a whole new economy emerging because of this programmable money, because of the way that cryptocurrency, so Bitcoin, started to be put to other uses, to be programmed to have utility in different ways. Starting off with, rather than this is just a coin, well, this is a coin that pays for your transaction fees on this network. This is a coin that can represent a thing in a supply chain. This is a coin that can represent a game piece. This is a coin that you can send to anybody free of censorship, free of borders. And that programmable money gives us ownership of assets in a digital world. And that is a whole new construct. When you look at digital artists, I know people who produce digital art. I have a friend, she's the artist who did the Twitter fail whale, if anyone's old enough to remember that. And she produces things digitally. And people ask her, where's the original? And she's like, it's here, it's on my iPad, it's on my computer, it's a digital file. And to provenance that using non-fungible tokens, NFTs, gives this whole new way for digital creators to show that they are the creator and that they should get the benefit from that creation. So we have that ownership and we have that reward to the creators. And then we have the things that are now coming through in gaming. And it's really interesting to watch gaming. Always watch what is happening in gaming, because the things that are happening in gaming will happen in real life soon. So one of the most exciting things for me over the last 4 years has been the growth of Axie Infinity, which is absolutely my favorite game. And I own little Axies, little game pieces that can battle and play and have fun in this world. But what I do when I'm also playing is that I earn coins. I don't earn very many coins. I'm just saying I get my backside handed to me in every single game. But I know that when I lose, somebody else is earning something. And people are using that as their real world income. So for the first time, we have a situation where people are able to earn in a strange sort of way in this game, in this artificial construct. But it gives us a vision of work that can be done in a metaverse and rewarding you in the metaverse and turning that money that you earn into food and bricks and mortar and things in the real world. So we finally have a connection between our realities, our person, our families, our environment, and our digital world. And that digital world is the things that we own. It is the things that we can occupy ourselves with. It is there is an incredible future staring at us from the metaverse. So I know there are going to be some questions coming through, but I want you to think about a few really key things, both when we're answering questions, and also when we're in breakout rooms, and when you're talking to your peers, and when you're thinking about what you learn from this fantastic course that Yip and her team have put together. So think about the barriers. Think about how you can break down the barriers to being successful in the metaverse. At the moment, it is hard for people to understand for instance, the way that you engage with wallets. I spent 25 minutes trying to mint an NFT yesterday because it was such a complex process of onboarding to a wallet that I had never used, but I had to use that one, and a payment method that I had never used, but I had to use that one, and just crazy things. So the barriers for people joining this world need to be broken down. The barriers just in technology, if you have a headset on, you're not engaging with your real world either. So how can those barriers in technology and in engagement be broken down? And think about the way that you can expand your communication, expand your collaboration. And I don't just mean peer-to-peer like this, but I also mean communicating with your market, communicating with your customers. There are incredible concepts that I'm hearing about, like brands in a metaverse world, in a Decentraland or a Sandbox or similar, or in Second Life, where your avatar is wearing the sweatshirt with their brand on. Are you rewarded for being an advertising hoarding? Are you rewarded for the views of your avatar? So the brand can reach people, and can you earn from that? Think about all of the different ways that people can engage in new business constructs in a metaverse where you have access to so many people from different walks of life. So I could literally talk about this solidly for about 3 hours, and I know we only have a really short period of time. And I guess the best thing for me to do is to answer some of your questions, because that always inspires some really interesting discussion. Do we have some questions?
Not yet. Maybe you can speak about a little bit about different concepts and what they mean. Like, for example, how do you define programmable money? How do we
Oh,
define
okay.
the metaverse? And then people, because most of our audience is still very new, so when they hear these concepts, it's the first time they're hearing them, and we need a bit of context. And I'll help
Brilliant.
then to moderate the questions.
That is brilliant. Okay, so metaverse, I guess, metaverse has been with us for a long, long time, and I think any way that we communicate through in a digital form is part of the metaverse. But the metaverse is becoming more of a digital place where you have an avatar, a representative of your physical self in that digital place. So this is what people are starting to think of as a metaverse. But all of the tools have been there for an incredibly long time. And one of my concerns with the idea that, the metaverse is you have to go into a virtual world to benefit from it, I find that a problem, because not everyone has access to enough bandwidth, enough data to be in that representative world. Not everybody has the time and the potential to sit there at their computer and engage with the digital world. So I have a problem with that definition, and I think that it is very much geared to the West and to certain demographics that have access to that technology. And I think that everybody has a right to be part of the metaverse, and so the definition must be broader. That's my feeling on that. Programmable money. Okay, this is the blockchain elements. So if we break it right down and say we started off with the idea that we could have some cash that could be transferred between people without going through a bank, and this gave us Bitcoin. And the idea of all that Bitcoin and its successors, so the thousands of coins that are now out there, all they do is they are a piece of code that simply moves from one place to another. But that code is code. It's programmed. So you can program that code to do something. You can program that little piece of code to interact with software. So at the really simplest level, if you have a little bit of Ethereum, then that little bit of Ethereum pays the fee for the transaction that you're doing. And the transaction could be something as simple as, I send Yip some money. And there are functions in that, there are code functions that define send money to Yip. And there is a cost to each of those things. And this programmable money works out the cost and pays the transaction fee. But then you go into the idea of tokens that have a function. So if I have my little Axie Infinity, my little Axie game piece, then once I identify myself in the game and it can see that programmable token in my wallet, it goes, haha, you have this little orange Axie with a turnip stuck in its bottom. So you can now play the game using that game piece. If I hadn't identified myself and my programmable token hadn't interacted with the software, I would not be able to play. So it's a missing piece of code that is inserted into the software to perform an action. Does that kind of help?
That's totally helpful. I'm going to read out a few questions, or first question from our audience. So, a very holistic question from Edric. He's like, how do you foresee the next billion users will get onto Web3? What will it really take to cross the chasm?
It will take far more accessible technologies. So even being able to engage by sending an SMS, to participate in the activity that is going on in Web3. It will take a removal of ridiculous barriers to entry to crypto, for instance, to cryptocurrencies, or the need to have really complex pieces of hardware to access a virtual world. So it's those barriers that are currently against adoption, and it has to be solved for everybody.
We have a question regarding regulation also. How do you think the future world of, like, how would the metaverse be regulated? Maybe we can also speak about the metaverse right now and the metaverse of the future, so then we can make the link of what really needs to happen in the space.
Yeah, regulation is a really interesting one, and it's not a short answer, because regulators are, by their nature, they are generally attached to a nation. So they have a centralized viewpoint. So the privacy regulators in Europe will have one approach to how you manage data. So we have general data protection regulations in Europe, and the regulators in California will have a different attitude to the regulators in Illinois, and to the regulators in Mexico, or to the regulators in China. So if you're talking about a global environment, there are no global regulators. So there are questions whether global organizations, so thinking about United Nations, the social good, the social good agenda, maybe that will be the source of certain regulation around metaverse. You also have the idea that you can self-regulate is really utopian, and it won't work. We see that already with social media. So when you say, oh, our distributed autonomous organization will solve all of this. No, it won't. I don't know if anyone remembers, but Microsoft released an artificial intelligence onto Twitter and let it learn. So it was a zero, I can't remember, it's learning without being trained. So it learned from the data on Twitter. They had to take it down within 24 hours because it was tweeting the most abusive and unpleasant stuff, because it had learned from the data that it had there. So we know that self-regulation is really, really hard. So I guess it is a tough one. We will have a patchwork of regulation that depends on the jurisdiction where you are accessing metaverse facilities, I guess. So, for instance, there was an attempt recently to ban on Monday to ban any transaction that involved proof of work in Europe, and that would have knocked out all the Ethereum based applications. It didn't go through, but people are thinking about it. So there will be local jurisdictions that will restrict access. There will be certain amounts of self-regulation. And I think we will in the future be looking to the big tech that will naturally go into the metaverse to pull their big boy pants on and actually help to regulate and to control the things that go on.
Yeah, it's like very, very complex world to think about, and we just started Unit Master, so we're just in week 1 of the 6 weeks program. But even in order to be able to grasp all of this, one needs to make an assumption. I'm just trying to explain to our audience that, like, when you really think about these questions about regulation, you actually have to think about what is your assumption on the future relevance and the future way of being of nation states. Right? One needs to really be clear about, and this is what we try to convey during Unit Masters. There's no right or wrong answer, but you need to be very conscious about the assumptions that you put into one's model of prediction of the future. If you believe that in the future, the next 7 to 10 years, nation states will stay in the way they are, then regulation, like, you can make some assumptions about how regulation will turn out. If you believe that nation states might change because power or the centralization of power might play out differently, then we're speaking about a completely different game. And this is what goes beyond blockchain and beyond metaverse, but so much laying the foundation for all these discussions. So hopefully you guys can, over the next few weeks, also think about what are your assumptions on how I think the world will look like, who will own the power, and so on. And we have a question here from Mariana. She says, hey, Kate, you say we are in the cusp of Web3, and it very often feels like a race, like, for example, in the metaverse, like land selling out, where some people get a head start. At the same time, it feels there's great economic opportunity from all social standings to get involved. But huge entry barriers, like you mentioned earlier, digital literacy, UX, UI problems are in the way. Do you have an opinion on the Web3 accounting for more or less economic equality? What do you think we need to do so that we can actually create that kind of inclusive or zero exclusive space so that everyone really gets a fair chance of tapping into that bigger pie?
Oh my word, I think education like this is the starting point. I think everybody needs to be aware of the potential and to literally start working on putting your footprint on Web3. There is a first mover advantage which has been taken by people who have the assets already to, the money to play in this kind of hyped and high value thing. I mean, that I look at the land grabs in Decentraland and I'm like, it's almost greedy. We've taken over the current reality and we want to take over the new reality as well. But I think that the more revolutionary things are going to come from countries who haven't participated as much in Web 2, to be honest. I mean, you hear fantastic stories, and I think one of my favorites from this week, I think, is there was an artwork called Everyday that was sold at Christie's a year ago for $69 million and it was a digital artwork that was composed of 5,000 individual digital artworks that were created by an artist called Beeple from 2007 up to the time that the work was sold. So in 2007, there was no Bitcoin, there was no decentralization. He was doing the artwork because he was a digital artist. And it sold for an extraordinary amount of money. It has been life-changing for him. It changed the way that people look at digital art. The interesting thing is the buyer. The guy who bought it started coding with only a thumb drive and borrowing computers in his village in India, and he became a self-made billionaire. And that is the interesting thing about it, that he saw the journey of the artwork, and and that resonated with him because it was his journey. But it's people like him and the people who are starting from absolutely literally. He carried a thumb drive. He borrowed friends' computers, and he built his first software that way. And I will find out. I've just seen that pop up. I will find out who it was. I'll look it up and I'll share with Yip after this. But if you look up the Beeple artist, then you will see the story of that.
Yeah. We have a few questions about impact. Like, what do you, like, I guess Marco is referring to the aspect that now, because of play to earn models came up where you play a game and you can earn money, people have an incentive to dedicate their time to playing games, right? Because that's how the incentive was set. And he's like, yeah, what can we actually do probably to mitigate that kind of incentive, if you think it should be mitigated, that we set incentives for people to dedicate their time to play games instead of, I don't know, doing social impact or whatever else?
Yeah, that's a really interesting one, because I guess the play to earn, the idea that you can earn money, and Axie is the one that has achieved this. But they've done it by making an artificial job, and the artificial job is playing the game for 5 hours a day. But I think it is proving the concept that you can do things online and be paid for it online. So I think it may change. There are things that we currently do that can be done digitally. So art is one of them. So if you are doing design work and you do it within a digital setting, can you be paid for the time that you spend in that setting? So I think that the playing the games, yeah, that will continue to be a thing, and people will play the game and earn. They will hold assets and earn. They will build up their profiles in the game. They will be paid for their skills and their time and the assets they own, which funnily enough is how we work in the real world. We are paid for our skills, our time, and the assets we own. And I think that gaming is as ever, gaming is the proof of concept, and other industries will follow. But they have to be real jobs. I think we can't stand still with saying we're just going to play games. They have to be real jobs that add to a real economy, not simply to a game.
Yeah, we're still in the space or the phase of the industry where we're still in experimental space, and all of you who enter, maybe you feel like, oh no, I entered too late, but in reality, you're probably one of the first 2% of this global world who actually take time to study blockchain, and there's so many opportunities for you to come in and make better models based on the first models that have now proven their proof of concept. Here's a question from Jenny, who's an educator. How do you think will the next generation of kids learn in this hybrid world? Like, yeah, what's the outlook of education within? Will they be able to differentiate what is real from the virtual? In which way does blockchain support or have an impact on next education models?
Oh, that's interesting. I have teenagers, and of course they have been learning virtually for 2 years because we were locked down in the UK and they couldn't go to school. And one absolutely loves it, learns online, learns from video, learns from everything. The other one hates it, absolutely hates learning from video, learning from things, didn't absorb anything, really struggled. So I think that a metaverse education is not suitable for everybody, but that hybrid and the increasing personalization that you can get with the technology of the metaverse is going to be important. So rather than everybody sitting in front of a video where they can't interact, if there is an opportunity to interact as if you were in the classroom, as if you were in a virtual world where you're able to reach and touch and maybe even, you know, experiment with things in your science class with haptics, my goodness, that would revolutionize education. That's a little way away, but I think we're going from the two-dimensional, I will watch this video, I will watch my teacher on the screen, to a three-dimensional, I can engage with the people who are sitting in the virtual room with me, and I can see them and I can see their avatars, to I can touch them and I can touch the things in here. And that's going to be the evolution, and that is 30 years away. But that's, I'm not sure whether that answers the question, but it's a vision.
Yeah, and we can all build it, right? All of you who are in here, the
Yes,
moment you understand how
absolutely.
everything works, you just build your own solution.
Yes.
We're closing the official panel with a final question on, actually, there was a question about the environmental impact. I think, you know, everybody's worried about
Oh yes, absolutely.
environmental
And
impact to blockchain. What's your view on that? And in particular of
oh
the
yeah,
metaverse, it's consuming a lot of computing power.
it is. So there are lots and lots of different things going on in there. So I'll address the blockchain one first, because that is a key one. Bitcoin was the proof of concept. It's kind of like Stephenson's rocket, so the first train that actually went from my hometown to the next town and belched out steam and was wonderful and transformational. But we're all in electric cars now. So Bitcoin is kind of, I think it belongs in a museum. I think it is vital and transformational, but it is far too carbon intensive, and there is absolutely no way, with the network effect around mining, you can't simply say we're just going to mine on renewables, because that doesn't stop somebody switching on a fossil fuel power station. It's just going to happen. So Bitcoin has its place as the only true censorship resistant and borderless digital currency, but it needs to be there for emergencies, and simply trickling down to just a handful of miners using renewable energy and making minimum impact, and having that utility. With other blockchains, the impact of, for instance, proof of authority chains. So Axie Infinity runs on a proof of authority chain, which has 0.00001% of the emissions of Bitcoin. So when you get to a spectrum of true decentralization, which Bitcoin is the far end of it, down to centralization, which is our, what we are all used to. Where as you move along that spectrum, you get less and less energy intensive, and there are so many solutions coming through now to make it workable. So that takes blockchain technology and cryptocurrency into the normal realm of enterprise systems. I mean, I think Ethereum uses about the same amount of energy as YouTube. I think somebody quantified that in an academic paper a couple of years ago. That was using the same energy as YouTube. So it's not massively excessive. Advances in technology are going to help. Advances in renewables are the key. And I think the future is brighter than you expect.
I will ask our speaker to give her final call to us, as in, what do we need to take away from thinking about the future of the internet?
Oh my word. Open to the possibilities and be aware of the technology. Don't don't get lost in all of the noise, because there is so much noise. Just have that awareness of what is there and what is possible, and look at what people are actually achieving. There is so much hype and fuss and shouting about, look at my project, look at this project, it's all going to be wonderful. Look at what is actually happening. Learn to filter and understand the things that are valid as against the things that are not. But be aware that all of this technology is here. And if you see a problem, look to the decentralized, look to the artificial intelligence, look to the realities for solutions, as well as to things that you already know about. So be open to the technology and the possibilities, and incorporate that in your search for solutions. And you are literally right at the start of all of this. Although there's a lot of work going on, it is a fraction, an absolute fraction of what is possible. And I know that because you're here, you are gaining the insights that will help you to shape the metaverse for everybody. And I'm really pleased to be here.
Thank you so much, wonderful mentor. And I hope to see everyone back at our next speaker session next week. We have a VC sharing about investors' perspective, and then we have somebody who actually built blockchains with IBM sharing about how do big corporations think about building blockchain and to tap into it. Thanks, everyone. Write your key takeaways, do your assignments, your quizzes for week 1, and see you again next week for week 2. Bye.